So, Mr. Hillier, can you tell us what happened today in court here?
Well, there's a number of things that did happen and that have started a new chain of events from happening. The first is that I have now elected to represent myself in the court of law. And due to my bail conditions that prevent me from speaking with material witnesses, relevant witnesses, that prohibit me from speaking about certain matters, including my charges, as well as a prohibition on my attending court without legal counsel. All those elements, if they remain in place, will be highly prejudicial and frustrate my ability to represent myself and to defend against these charges. So I've asked the court to amend the bail conditions. I've also asked for the full and complete disclosure that my previous counsel had to be expedited and sent over to me, and absolve my former counsel of any obligations on that. But I think first and foremost what needs to be said is the administration of law, our courts, those were all designed, created, and built to be shields for people. They were shields to protect our freedoms, our civil liberties, and our properties. What has become exceptionally obvious, the court system has been distorted and problematic for many decades. However, during COVID, we have seen the law is no longer a shield for people. The law is now a sword wielded by government and the crown to shred and rip apart our freedoms and our civil liberties. I'm going to defend myself in the court of law, and I'm going to use the law as a shield. And what needs to be done here is the cover-up, the abuse, the horrendous burdens that people are having to carry because of this weaponization of our legal system has to be exposed and it has to be destroyed. In a court of law, you never know for certain what the verdict will be. But there was one certainty with my prior defense strategy, in that I would be bankrupted, my family would be impoverished, my wife and I of 43 years would be homeless if I continued on that defense strategy. That is not a just outcome.
Is that connected to your parting ways with David Amber?
Correct. That was the only certainty that I had, and this is not specific to my previous counsel. This is very much prevalent and infrequent with all legal counsel. It is the entire legal apparatus has become nothing more than a machine, and a monstrous machine whose appetite is not only our freedoms, not only our civil liberties, but also our wealth, our prosperity, and it is used to punish and destroy people who are law-abiding, who operate and conduct themselves within the constitutional rights of this country. And the legal system is being used to cover up the horrendous harms and injuries that our government imposed on all people over the last 4 years.
You're well and truly alone. What keeps you going?
Well, this is not a battle for me. This is a battle for your son, my grandsons and granddaughters. I have 7 of them. For my own adult children. We were left because of the efforts and the valor and the courage of our ancestors, we got to live and grow up and prosper in a free country. We must do the same for our children and our grandchildren.
Do you see any similarities between your case and the other, let's call them dissenters in Canada, who spoke out against the COVID pandemic edicts? Any of them, whether they be the lockdowns?
Well, we've seen it with all the high-profile names or the lesser-known names. You know, the big names like Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, where the Crown has lost evidence, has swiped pertinent evidence. It's no longer available for the defense. We see it with 78-year-old Jerry Charlebois, who was arrested violently by the Ottawa police because he honked his horn. His charge, they abused him, took him through this onerous, expensive, costly system for near a year and a half, and then they dropped the charges. We saw the same thing with Evan Blackman. We have seen this countless times. Thousands of charges needlessly laid, inappropriately laid, an abuse of process, and all to punish those people who stood for freedom. And then at the last moment, after they've exhausted their financial resources, after they've put them through such strain and agony, then they drop the charge that should never have been never should have been laid in the first place.
A lot of your criticisms and concerns from the very beginning of the pandemic have come true. Your concerns about the economic impacts of locking people down, paying them to stay at home, your concerns about the psychological effects this would have on children in schools, the vaccine mandates with this experimental drugs. Do you think that the mainstream media owns some of this for not being more skeptical, like you were? I mean, right now, right here, we're in front of the court, and it's just us. It's me and at cannabiscourt.com.
Miss Cannabis
Miss
Court.
Cannabis Court.
Yeah.
I mean, we're here. We're the only ones following this. Helen Bruce is a similar
Helen Bruce is
situation.
another great example of the abusive process, where one might even use the terms malicious prosecution. You know, this is
where's the
we
fourth
don't know
estate?
for certain at the present time.
Well, where's the fourth estate in all of this, right?
But whether we want to subscribe incompetence or negligence or malfeasance or worse, we don't know that yet. But as you mentioned, I started speaking out in the Ontario legislature of the harms of COVID. The first time was March 26. That was my first opportunity to speak. And it was evident to me at that time, from the multitude of phone calls that I was getting as an elected representative, of the harm that we were causing to people, the loss of medical care, of hospital care, of doctors' care, the loss of employment, the closure of their businesses, the isolation, it was a time that I had never ever witnessed such harm and injury being propagated against the people of Canada. And yes, the media was complicit and didn't do their job. Why? Well, I'm going to tell you now. When my trial goes forward, there will be members of the media called as witnesses in my defense. These measures have to be, what actually happened has to be understood, and I will be calling senior members of the government, senior law enforcement officers, senior but retired elected members of the parliament to be here and to give testimony to why and how we allowed so much harm and injury to be done, and how they sat back and allowed our shield of justice to be weaponized against us.
Do you see your, let's call it your prosecution? I'd prefer to call it a persecution, but yours, Tamara Lynch's, Chris Barber's, Helen Bruce's, all of the folks that you mentioned, there are more too. Do you see that as a kind of a shield that the government is using, the overarching government, to prevent, the further investigation into the harmful effects of the experimental mRNA drugs?
There could be no question.
Fallout? I mean, it's a distraction.
There can be no question. There was a crime committed in the last 4 years. It's not Tamara Leach, it's not Chris Barber, it's not Jerry Charlebois, it's not me. But I would also say there's been a cover-up of the culpability, a cover-up of incompetence. They have not, our government is not seeking truth nor justice these days. They are seeking to not be held accountable for what they've done to all Canadians. Thank you very much. Thanks for attending court today. And November 30th, we'll be back at it again. And I trust the courts will not frustrate nor be prejudicial to my defense, and amend these bail conditions and provide me and expedite the disclosure in my case.
Do you think you'll come back in person, or will you try to do it by Zoom?
I will always prefer to be in person. COVID was the way that they isolated us and got us all on a Zoom feed. I'm going to be here in person unless they put me in jail before I get here.
Sounds good. And perhaps we'll share the Zoom link for the November 30th with my followers. We'll get that all connected so that they can follow along.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.